What's up, guys? It's Parallax Abstraction, and this is Retro Flashforward, showcasing gaming's roots in the current generation. Man, remember when I used to make videos? I know. I'm sorry there hasn't been a lot of content lately. I've been super busy with a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm back, and I'm here to show you guys another new title with some retro inspirations that I got a review code for again. It's kind of cool that I'm getting a bit more of these lately. So this is Artificial Intelligence Police Department. I don't get what the name means either, really. It doesn't really mean much of anything. But this is kind of neat. This comes from another dev with an amazing name. This is from Blazing Badger. I love these creative names that indie devs are coming up with lately. And it is another shmup with some interesting twists on it that I thought would be kind of cool to show off. So this is the PC version, but it is also available on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So I'm playing with a controller. You can play with more traditional PC controls if you want. Oddly enough, when you have a controller, you still control a mouse cursor in the menus, which is really kind of strange, but whatever. So, the core concept of this is actually pretty simple. This is a score attack game through and through. Your goal is to get as high a score as you can. Up to 4-player, local-only multiplayer, which is pretty neat. I don't have anyone else here to play this with, so it's just going to be me, sorry. And the idea of this is that it is a relatively short experience, but you can kind of customize your challenge, and this is what I like about it that I'm going to show you here. So I'm just going to start with the standard mode to show off what this is about here. So you pick that, you pick your difficulty, we're just going to go with medium here. Now you don't start with all the weapons unlocked, you actually start with very few unlocked, but they unlock super quick. I haven't been playing this game super long, and I've already got everything unlocked because I got the achievement for that. So anyway, you've got weapons of various different kinds here. I'll show off a few of these as we go, but they all have very different effects and different methods of approaching problems, basically. There's also weapon heat mechanics in this game that you have to look after, and each of these works in a slightly different way. So the accelerator is one that I really like. So you pick that, and then you have what's called your modification, which will add different effects to your weapons, but also has a trade-off. So this is a way that allows you to sort of, again, customize your experience. Point defense is one that I kind of like. It increases your emergency shield duration. You get a little bit of a shield that pops up every time you get hit. And it also frequently destroys nearby enemy projectiles. So let's go with that. So this is a wave-based shooter for the most part. Reminiscent a little bit of games kind of like Geometry Wars, which is sort of the arena-based shooter that a lot of people go to, but it actually much more closely reminds me of a lesser-known Steam game that came out a while ago called Waves, which is another arena-based shooter game that I actually really enjoy, and the dev is actually making a sequel to that, which I just found out about, which is really cool. This resembles that much more closely, and basically your goal here is to clear out up to 15 waves of enemies and then fight a boss and get as big a amount of points by the end as you can. There's only 15 arenas, there is only one boss. When you clear it, that's it, it's game over. That's the thing that's probably going to put off some people, but we'll get to that. So in between each arena, you have to pick a challenge. You cannot opt out of this, you've got to pick one. And what the challenges do is they add to your multiplier, which, much like Geometry Wars, is key to getting the big scores. And these are cumulative, so you have to pick a new one after every arena, and they stick with you throughout the entire game. So some of these are... The harder ones are supposed to give more multipliers. I find this is a little bit unbalanced. I find some of the ones they consider harder to not be that hard, really. But you pick one, and you move on. And this is basically what you do. So your goal is to try to keep your multiplier up, which you get by collecting these little shapes that look a lot like geomes from Geometry Wars that increase your multiplier. Your multiplier will drop every time you get hit. There are also challenges that can cause it to drop a little bit over time, things like that. So your goal is to obviously avoid getting hit as much as possible, avoid dying, and get your multiplier up as high as you can so that you can get the big points. You only have one life as well, so you saw the two bars there beside, so yeah, here, player leaks multiplier constantly, but as you can see, you get a huge kick for that. So you see we've got the 2 meters on either side there, so the one on the right is your weapon heat. So, simply put, you fire your weapon too much without letting it cool down, your weapon will stall out for a little bit. So that's a fairly standard mechanic you see in a lot of games. And the left is your health. You only have one life in this game, so when you die once, that's it, it's game over. but it takes quite a while to bring you down to that, even on higher difficulties. So that's sort of the trade-off of that, is 1 life, but it's a long life, which I think is kind of a neat idea. I actually like that. There are also multiple different kinds of power-ups you can pick up in this game. So you see that... this is going a little bit too quick here. Let's just pick a quick one here. So you see that little white symbol below my ship, and you've probably also seen one that appears above it. So, like that. So the top symbol is a more frequent recurring power-up that you can use. So what that one is, you can see it's a little snowflake. What that does is while it's active, it means my weapons don't heat up. There are also additional ones that give you temporary extra shielding, things like that. They're little sort of, how would you put it, quality of life benefits, shall we say, for when you're playing this game. And the bottom one is actually a super weapon. So there's various different kinds of this. Some of them are kind of like shotgun-style weapons. The one that I have right now is homing missiles. There are ones that have very large sort of area of effect bomb drops. And, as you can see, these are good for getting yourself out of hairy situations. So all of these things have limited uses, and you can't pick up something to replace them while one is in use. So it does not behoove you to hold on to this stuff. So even if you don't... So this is like... That was like the area of effect one. I love that one, just because the effect is so cool. So it does not behoove you to hold on to these. You want to turn and burn these things pretty quick, because new ones do drop on a fairly regular basis, at least in normal gameplay settings. So you kind of want to be careful of that. There are a number of different enemies in the game that you're going to face off against, so you can see here that we have... So you've sort of seen these here. We have these sort of little orange guys that just fly around, the bigger orange guys that will actually launch missiles at you, these huge worm-like things here, and the purple enemies are ones that can have much more devastating impact on their own. So they will do... Sometimes they'll explode if they get near you, sometimes they shoot large-scale projectiles like that. So here's another power-up. This is time dilation, which is literally just a slowdown. So you'll see things like that, and some of them will teleport around and have these really big laser projectiles that they'll shoot at you. It can ramp things up pretty quick. On the normal difficulty, this isn't too hard, but when you turn this up to higher levels, it gets bonkers. And you've really got to pay attention to that if you want to get through to the end. You can still file your score to the leaderboards and stuff if you don't finish the game, but obviously getting through all 15 waves is how you're going to get the biggest score. Obviously, this all has online leaderboards, so you can track this against other people. The one thing that kind of bums me out about this is that the leaderboards are tracked only per game type, not per difficulty. So you're obviously going to get more points if you get... Oh, I hate those guys. So you're obviously going to get more points if you get to the end of the game with playing on the hardest difficulty, right? But because they don't track that independently, if you choose to play on anything below that, you're really automatically handicapping yourself, because you're never going to get to that high score level in the lower difficulties. So the top of the leaderboards are going to be filled by people. So this is a weird AoE thing here. Basically, it's an EMP pulse that when you're in it will screw up your primary weapons. Gives you a huge multiplier, but it can really mess with you later. So that's kind of a bummer. I like games like Bullet Heaven 2 or something like that that actually have independent leaderboards for the difficulties as well, because if you don't have a prayer of competing, unless you are the kind of really high-level player that can dominate the high-end difficulties, that kind of takes some of the fun out of it. Now, there's two schools of thought on that. The other school of thought is, well, they do it that way to encourage you to get better at the game and to become good enough at the higher end difficulties that you can get on the boards that way. I kind of get that school of thought, but I'm personally more for flexibility. I say let everybody compete on a level playing field, and I think that's how you ultimately encourage a larger player base and to retain a larger player base. I think if people want to play the higher difficulties, their desire to do so on their own will get them to that stage. They don't need to be sort of forced into it if they want to be competitive. To me, that feels like it's going to drive more people away. Maybe there's data that shows I'm wrong on that. That's just how I see it. So that is a little bit of a bummer, but a fairly minor one. The real key to this game is these challenges, and what is really interesting about this is that there's multiple modes in the game, including custom modes you can design yourself, where you can actually handicap yourself, kind of like Bullet Heaven 2 did with its handicap system that I really enjoyed about it, where you can sort of artificially boost your challenge and compete for different leaderboards based on that amped up challenge. So if you're at a point where the game, the standard mode is either boring to you or is too easy or something like that, you can basically choose to make things harder for yourself and be rewarded for that. And I love games that give that level of customizability, that just say, hey, make this what you want it to be. And, you know, if there's certain things that you feel good enough to deal with on a regular basis, then you just, you know, you should do that. And I think that's really neat. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of that here, because I think that's what makes this game shine. Make no mistake, I'm enjoying this, and I really like the mechanics of this, but compared to even games like Bullet Heaven 2 or something like that, if a sheer amount of content and levels and enemy variation is the main reason you come to games like this, you may not like this. Like I said, there's only 15 levels, there's only a few enemy variations, and there's only one boss. If you expect more than that, if you want more than that, you are probably better off going with either Bullet Heaven 2 or just a more traditional shmup like Raiden or Ikaruga or something like that, if sheer amount of content is what you want. This game has a smaller amount of content, but wants you to redo that content repeatedly in order to min-max it and get really, really good at it and maximize your score. It's a different approach to how you would expect a shmup to be designed, and some people are going to like it, some people aren't. I personally see the value in both kinds. This is a game, even if I didn't get the review code for it, I think I probably would have enjoyed just because of the concept within it. I think there's a lot of value in that, but you're going to have to judge for yourself, and that's why I'm putting this out there, so that people can decide on that. Because this is not a long game, and it's not made to be. But what it does, I think it does in a very interesting way and with some unique concepts here. So I'm almost dead, so I'm just going to let myself die off here. So you see here your multiplier can get absolutely bazungas. If you've been watching the upper left there, I'm at almost 2,000 right now. If you're good at avoiding enemy damage and min-maxing those challenges, yeah, it can build up really high, and that's what you got to do. You want to max out these leaderboards, that's what you got to do. All right, so there we go. So I blew that. So let's back it out. So there we go. So you can see here, this game just came out. So I actually, when I finished this, I did pretty well on the leaderboards. Actually, wow, someone's actually already beaten the developers. That's pretty impressive. Good job, Delta Gamer. So yeah, so here's where things get a little bit more interesting. Obviously, there's multiplayer as well, as we discussed. But these are where the variants come in. So all of these things are playing the same. You're doing the same levels, same enemy, same boss. But what you're affecting here is the actual conditions under which you're playing. So you see here, if you play tough transporters, super weapon transports are fully upgraded. Hostile space, enemy danger, environmental dangers are all present. So that means all of the modifications and challenges you can do that are directly affected to the environment that you're playing in, they're all on by default. High-Tech Armada, enemies start with all their abilities essentially fully leveled up, so that makes things tricky. And then this is where things get really neat. You can design. So these are all the challenges, and you can turn a bunch of these on or off by default, and then save it as a profile that you can compete against. This, I think, is really, really interesting. So, and as you can see here, you hover over things, and it gives you a little bit of an explanation on each different challenge, and it shows what kind of multiplier you get. So if you select all of these, you can start with 1,600 on your multiplier. Now this is obviously going to be completely frackin' bonkers, but if you want that level of pain, you can do it. So, and then you can just save it. And as you can see here, this is one I played with this is one I played with before here, design number 1. Now the thing here that I find kind of strange is it looks like you can't actually edit it after the fact or actually see what the challenges are. It doesn't look like I can actually edit that. That's kind of a bummer. I didn't know that. That actually, I'm not so big on that. It would be nice to see what challenges I did put in this design and be able to possibly edit it as well after the fact. Or, you know what? Let's just try this. Why not? So let's just start with the normal Gatling gun, and let's say speed. Increases flight speed, decreases the shield duration. And as you can see, I started with 1600 multiplier. Yeah. Another little thing to note as well, this is actually not a twin stick shmup. This is a, I'm actually holding the right trigger to fire. So you move around, you actually strafe your ship around using the left stick, and then you change your angle that you're pointing at with the right stick. But you actually fire with the right trigger. And then you click the right stick down to activate your power-up, and you click the left stick down to activate your super weapon. So a little bit different than you might think in terms of traditional controls, but it plays very well. I actually quite like that. So you can see here, Omega Bombs are one of the environmental hazards. Basically, certain enemies will drop these Omega Bombs. If you don't pick them up, you get massive damage, but you also get a lot of points if you do pick them up. So you see here, I wasn't asked to pick a challenge because I have them all activated, so it just took me straight to a new area. There's also things like the, like you saw the sort of meteor things that were coming down. There's the EMP. You can have things, if you have all the enemy power-ups turned on, certain bigger enemies can be escorted by other enemies, which you kind of saw with that that big sort of slug pod there that had some extra escorts around it. It doesn't have in the normal game like that. You have to take them out if you want to be able to hurt the main enemy. Things like that. So as you can see, it can ramp up really, really quickly here. And there's independent leaderboards for the edit mode as well. Now, I don't know if this is leaderboards based specifically on the edits that I've chosen to make. So if it's something along the lines of, well, there's a leaderboard for every combination, or if it's just there's a leaderboard for each slot. If it's for each slot, that would kind of suck. So let's see here. Yeah, see, this is not explicitly clear on that. So an easy way to tell is, so like this is my design. Let's take a look here. Once again, if it's just one leaderboard for the entirety of the custom edit mode, that's not very good in my eyes, because obviously the people who are probably going to do the best at it, well, not necessarily, I guess. I was going to say the people who would do best at it are the people who can activate every single challenge and then finish the game. I mean, yes, that's true. But at the same time, you're obviously making the game a lot harder for yourself. If you were playing with less challenges turned on, but managed to get a lot further and get hit less and keep a multiplier built up, you might actually do better than someone who does have all the challenges enabled. Still, though, like I said, between making everybody play on the same leaderboard regardless of difficulty and regardless of the challenges they have enabled creates an unlevel playing field. And while I could get the reasons behind doing that, I personally like the choice. I personally like letting people compete on whatever level they are comfortable with rather than forcing them into God tier in order to be the best at it that they can be. But that's just a matter of opinion. Let's get ourselves just killed off here so that we can see what the leaderboard looks like. Fortunately, this is probably going to take me quite a while, so I wonder if I can just back out. Okay, I can. So it looks like this is the same leaderboard. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm not so big on that. I do wish... Couple of things I would like to see. I'd like to see leaderboards for each of the design types. I'd like to see leaderboards for independent leaderboards for different difficulties, and yeah, I would definitely like to see those. I think those would be big quality of life improvements. But other than that, I mean, this is a pretty simplistic game. You've gotta like this kind of thing. Let's just go out on blazing here and see what we can do. What the heck? Phaser is an interesting one too. Let's try this. Blazing difficulty is madness. So this one's kind of neat. You hold the button down and it just sort of auto-fires at enemies, but you can burn heat real quick on it, as you can see there. So yeah, I would like to see those little things and as quality of life improvements, and the simple fact of the matter is you've got to be into this kind of game. Like I said, this is not a game with a lot of content, but its content is very heavily focused around one particular thing. And I like games that don't try to be all things to all people. I do like games that have a focus they want to sort of devote their efforts to. and they want to make that focus as tight an experience as they can, and I respect Blazing Badger for doing that. I like what this game is going for. I could totally see why a number of both shmup fans and maybe just general game fans, I can see why they would not necessarily be into that. You know, even a game like Waves has a lot more mission variety and objective variants and things like that, and actually the new version of Waves that is in early access now looks like it's going to ramp that up even more. So from a pure value proposition standpoint, if you're not into this specific type of score attack, you may find something like that more interesting. I personally do like this, and for around $10, give or take, which is what it's selling for, I think it's a pretty good deal for that. I could see myself putting a lot of time into this, but you've got to be into that as well. The requirements for this also list Intel HD graphics, which means this would probably run on any number of non-gaming laptops, which would be fantastic as well. This is a good little time waster for those situations, and of course it's on the consoles as well, where I'm sure it's fine there too. This is actually an Unreal Engine 4 game, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I enjoy this, but know what you're going to get out of it. Like a lot of shmups, honestly. Shmups are a very subjective genre. You know, they are not, there are a few shmups that are all things to all people, and this is no exception to that. But I think it's cool, and I like it, and for $10 I think it's a pretty good deal. So yeah, that is Artificial Intelligence Police Department, developed by Blazing Badger and published by, I believe they're called Mamor Games or Mamor Games, in 2016 for the PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. I dig it. Gotta know what you want before you go into it, but I think there's a lot to like here. My name is Parallax Abstraction. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked what you saw here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That does help me out a great deal. And well, I will see you guys next time. Take it easy, everybody. Time to get back to police work.